This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Place to Be Nation, welcome back to another great episode of Making Mount Rushmore here on the Place to Be Nation Pop Feed. I'm your moderator, Andy Atherton. Thank you for joining me tonight. Tonight, I have a great panel, a couple of debuts on the show, guys that are very familiar, though, around these parts. Tonight, we're going to be talking about video games, more specifically sports video games, very popular. In the first half, we're going to break down the Mount Rushmores of the ones that you would play in the arcade, and then later on, we're going to do all the ones that you get at home, like the console games, if you will. So let's get the panelists in here, and let's get the show on the road. First off, Matt Souza. Matty, what's going on?
Hey, Andy. Thanks for allowing me back after the last episode, which, of course, last episode I was on, which, of course, ended in some arguments between me and Sean. Weird, I know, but thank you for having me back.
Yeah, I thought this week in the NFL was going to implode before our very eyes on that show. But I'm glad D'Amato and Roger got through it, as well as you guys. Also joining us, Logan Crosland. What's going on, Logan?
How you doing, Andy?
I am great. Thank you for being here tonight.
I appreciate you inviting me on. And Sean caused an argument? You're kidding.
He never does that. All right. Also joining us tonight, Steve Bennett, making his debut on Making Mount Rushmore.
Hey now. Thanks for having me, Andy. Appreciate it.
Yep, it's great. Great to have you here. I appreciate you coming by. And rounding out our quartet tonight, greetings from Allentown himself, Mr. Peter Winson. What's going on, Pete?
I am so thrilled to be here and talk about sports video games because when I was 9 years old, while other kids were playing Mega Man and Metroid, I was playing Double Dribble and Bases Loaded and exploiting the glitches in the game.
Yes, nice calls. Was that when you were home from Sportscaster Camp?
Oh, God, please don't make me talk about Sportscaster.
Maybe a future episode, actually. We may be talking about Sportscaster, so we'll have to make sure you're on that one. So, like I said, we're going to talk about sports video games, and these are the games in the arcade. These are the games that you really pumped your quarters in, and, hopefully you lasted. Some games were really kind of rip-offs where you got like an inning or 5 minutes, and other ones you had to the better you did, the more longer you got to play. So we're going to start off with Matt. Matt, give us one of your arcade game, Mount Rushmore entries.
All right, so we're going to start with not only what I think is the best sports arcade game of all time, but I think it's maybe the best sports game of all time, and that's NBA Jam.
Oof.
I mean, what in the world can you say about NBA Jam? Boom shakalaka. They just put out that arcade 1-up edition of NBA Jam, and the only reason I haven't bought it yet, well, two reasons. One, it's expensive, and two, I'm afraid that if I did buy it, I would never leave my house again. I have sunk a ton of time into NBA Jam, and it 100% deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore.
Yes. Oh, great pick. Had I participated, I probably would have had that up there. I remember some of my fraternity brothers owned a bar, and I pumped a lot of quarters. Who's your go-to team, Maddie, on NBA Jam? Back in the day now. I'm talking about, there are different incarnations. I'm talking about the original. My team was the Orlando Magic. I had Scott Skiles and Shaq, basically, was my duo.
Yeah, I used to use them. I used to kind of just jump around. I used to use the Magic a lot because of Shaq. Houston, I used to use a pretty good amount. And, Boston, because I'm in Massachusetts, so I feel like I had to use Boston at some point. But
funny story, though. Outside that bar one time, I think one of my fraternities got into an argument with somebody. They were about to start a fight, and they're like, come on. I'm like, but I'm, winning. I'm on fire. I don't need to come out. There's enough of you. You're good.
Especially if you were playing the computer in NBA Jam, winning wasn't always easy because it had that rubber band AI, and it used to always come back, and every game would be within 2 points with a minute left. So.
Yeah. Logan, you had it on your Mount Rushmore as well. No surprise. How come you put it on there?
I always really enjoyed it whenever I got to play it, and my team was always the Charlotte Hornets. I had a great grandmother that lived in Charlotte, so we went to a couple of Charlotte Hornets games. So that was always kind of my team growing up playing this game. They had Larry Johnson and Kendall Gill. But yeah, being on fire and doing all the sweet dunks and all that kind of stuff, I just really always enjoyed playing this one.
Oh yeah, the alley-oops, everything. Steve.
Oh, yeah.
You also had it on yours. How come?
I had it on because I always played it if they had it, whether it was, Major Magics or Chuck E. Cheese or Putt Putt or whatever arcade I was at. If they had it, I played it. I like to be Miami because I like to shoot threes with Glenn Rice, I remember. So I know I was them a lot. But yeah, I just always played it. That's why I put it on. When I thought of what sports game did you used to play all the time at the arcade, it was the very first one that came to my mind.
Mm-hmm. And rounding out, we had a clean sweep here, NBA Jam. Peter, you also had it. What was your go-to team, and how come you put it on your list? Stunned silence. Peter, you're on mute, Peter.
Of course. You know what? I work all day. I worked all day, and I do this like 3-4 times a day. So Charlotte is generally my team for the reasons mentioned earlier. I like you had a lot of options between Alonzo Mourning and Larry Johnson and Kendall Gill. I also like Houston as well, just because I'm a big Hakeem Olajuwon fan. But I usually value realism in my sports video games. But you could throw that out the window with NBA Jam because it's just so much. It's just so much fun. Like just talking about it now makes me angry that I didn't shell out the whatever it is for that 1-up machine. In fact, I feel so bad for Souza. I almost want to give him a scholarship. So oh no, I'm not going to leave the house. In the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, really?
Now's the time, Souza. Now's the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's 400 right now. I mean, if you give it time, it may drop, as I'll talk about when we get to another entry that people had on their list about Arcade 1-Up. But let's continue on now. Logan, give us one of your Mount Rushmores.
I also had NFL Blitz. I really always enjoyed that game because of the big hits and it kind of put a little bit of wrestling into some NFL football because you could absolutely just obliterate guys and body slam them, and they would do crazy like German suplexes and stuff like that. So it kind of melded football and a little bit of wrestling into it. So I always really enjoyed that one for the big hits and all the fun times you could have with that one.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I played it plenty of times. Steve, you also had it on your list. How come it made yours?
It reminded me a lot of NBA Jam, but for football, right? I always got that feeling that I was just playing this really arcade-style game. Kind of, like Peter said, you throw the realism part of it out. Also, I worked at a pro shop, a hockey pro shop, for a bunch of years, and we had this game in that arcade, and I always played it instead of working. So I put it on.
Yeah. I worked at a bowling alley in high school and college, so I played a lot of the Neo Geo games. They had a baseball game, I think, on there. Street Fighter 2. In college, we had Super Sprint. I think we had. Did we have Bases Loaded? I'm not sure. What was that? What was the baseball game where you started off up tied in the 7th inning, and then it got progressively harder? Cecil Fielder was on the All Stars. I remember that. I used to play the All Star game a lot. He was still in Detroit at the time because this was the early '90s. But we had that game, so I played that a lot. Matt, you also had it on yours.
Yeah, pretty much for the same reasons everybody said. And you mentioned at the top, Andy, about some arcade games being quarter munchers. This was absolutely one of them. If I remember, the one near me, I don't know if it was like this for everybody else, but it was like 25 cents to play one quarter. So it was $1 to play a full game, which at the time was crazy. But, I mean, yeah, it's great. It's NFL Blitz. I mean, just destroying people with, getting 7 interceptions a game. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Peter, now this didn't make your list. Or have you played NFL Blitz? Are you a fan, not a fan?
I vaguely remember that game. I just don't have any real memories of playing it. I mean, I know that there was a lot. Was that an NBA Jam copycat? Did that come out in the aftermath of that? Because yeah. I mean, I might have just been sticking my quarters into NBA Jam. I was like, let everybody else go over to the NFL Blitz. More NBA Jam time for me.
That's great. Awesome. All right, Steve, give us one of yours that made your Mount Rushmore.
All right, I'm going to finish the trifecta of NBA Jam type games with 2-on-2 Open Ice Challenge, which I always looked at as the hockey version of NBA Jam, NFL Blitz being the football version, and I guess NBA Jam being the NBA version. Again, this was one we had in the pro shop. Also, and I'll mention this in the home video games, I could be Pavel Bure on it. Pablo Bure is my all-time favorite athlete, and he was awesome at this game. And I would dominate everyone in the pro shop, all the 6, 7-year-old kids who just got off their ice time. I would bash their heads in. And like NBA Jam or NFL Blitz was mentioned, it was like a quarter for every quarter. I believe this is a quarter for every period. So I would have, if I cashed $1 in, I'd be able to play the whole game and then get a gumball. So I appreciated that as well.
There you go, a little bonus. Was this the one where they used to have the Zamboni come out, like in between periods? There was one. I remember there was one hockey game that had that in the arcade. I'm trying to remember which one it was.
I don't recall a Zamboni, but it could have been.
Yeah.
I remember their heads were big sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
for some reason, I think that was their version of On Fire. Their head would just get really big, which helped. I mean, anyone knows if your head enlarges, that's good for hockey.
All right. Well, this actually did not appear on anybody else's. Mount Rushmore is Peter. Were you familiar with this game?
The NHL game, of course. I would play that, but it was very, very difficult to find. It wasn't in as many places near me, but I do know that it was at the Pheasant Lane Mall in Nashua, New Hampshire. And when I would go there, my team of choice would be Winnipeg. Number one, because they had Keith Kachuk, who I went to the same high school as Keith Kachuk. And number two, when you choose a team like Winnipeg, you're bound to freak out the squares, and I like the appeal of that. You had Hartford in there too.
Yes.
I mean, it's so nice.
Mm-hmm. Matt, did you ever play this game?
I've not played it. None of the arcades near me had it. I've definitely heard of it, though. I've always wanted to give it a try, but there's no arcades around me ever had it.
Oh, Logan, you a hockey guy?
Not big hockey guy, and I'm from the South, so we don't do much hockey down here. So, but I feel like I vaguely remember playing the game that you're talking about with the Zamboni, but I don't know if it was this one, obviously.
All right, Peter, your turn. Let's give us something that was on your list.
This one is a little strange because it's an older game and people might not remember it just based on the name, because there are actually two versions of it, but I think the more common one is called World Series The Season by a company called Cinematronics, and you're like, well, what the hell is that? It was that game where you would pull back the stick to both hit and pitch.
Yes.
It came out in the mid-'80s, and I was floored when I would play this game. There was a baseball card store near me that had it, and I would spend a ton of time in there. And one of the reasons why I loved it, I talk about how much I love realism in games. The way you could pitch, you could make the ball curve, like authentically like a curveball, a slider. I thought that the hitting was fairly realistic as well. But the thing that always blew my mind and would always try to do, you could hit the foul pole in that game, which I cannot stress enough in mid-'80s video gaming. Like, when you play baseball on the regular Nintendo, the ball would just float through the wall for a home run. This one actually was smart enough where you hit a foul pole. I love that game. I probably spent hundreds of dollars in quarters, like, in the summers.
Wow, yeah. Now I remember, it was very simple. It was a little metal with a black knob on it, right? And you just pulled it back. Mm-hmm. Yeah, not fancy at all, but tons of fun. Wow, that was a deep pull. Any other guys ever play that?
I absolutely remember the little swinging stick thing, and loved playing it as well. Yeah, I couldn't remember the name of it, so I didn't add it, but I remembered it, thought about it for sure, because I love that swinging stick kind of uniqueness of it. Mm-hmm.
Maddie, you ever play it or hear of it?
No, neither. before my time.
Yeah, my time. And probably the same with Logan.
Yeah. Something about the little pulling the thing back rings a bell, but I can't say I've ever heard of this one.
I know Dave and Buster's has something now where you do pull it back. It's a baseball game, but it's not as much fun as that one. I'm trying. It's really the hamster's running on his wheel to remember these things right now, and I do remember playing it. We had a Nathan's not far, which had an arcade. Like a really good arcade for a long time, and I used to live walking distance from there, so a roll of quarters would last me the entire day, and I do remember them having this game. All right, so let's go back to Matt. Matt, give us another entry for your Mount Rushmore.
So this one's a bit of an interesting one. It's from, I want to say, the late 90s, early 2000s, and it's Virtua Tennis. Was a pretty big game for me. I believe it came out on the Dreamcast too, but I played it mostly in arcades. And another game that I really enjoyed playing every time I played it was another sports game that was absolutely a quarter muncher. It was like a quarter, or might have even been like 50 cents for a set, which was crazy. So, I mean, I didn't play it all that often just because of the price, but I really enjoyed what I played of it. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. I remember seeing this. I probably played it a handful of times. Wasn't I don't know. Not always tennis. Not always my go-to in the arcade. And you guys play this as well?
It's not ringing
I
a bell
believe
for
I
me.
played it. I believe I played it a few times.
Yeah. What'd you think of it?
I enjoy. I always enjoyed it when I played it, from what I remember.
It's not ringing a bell for you, Pete?
No, I don't remember that one.
I don't remember it either.
It's much better to play tennis in video game form than to watch it on TV.
All right. Yeah, we could talk about it too when we get to the home game. There are been some very fun home tennis games. But Logan, give us another one of your entries.
Another one of my entries is Golden Tee Golf. This is mostly remembered for being able to do the little roller ball back and forth. I think, Andy, you just got this one on the arcade one-up.
Yes,
so I think that may have been what you were teasing earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But, just being a little kid and being able to play with a little roller ball, I mean, just for the fact of that made it super fun. But as I got older, obviously, it was a super fun game to play. And but yeah, I never really played this one in arcades. It seemed to be in a lot of restaurants that kind of have that kind of stuff at the front. So I played it. I've played it before a ton, but I just never seemed to actually be in any arcades. But for some reason, it was in the Applebee's that we have here, so I used to play it there all the time.
It's a big bar game, you know, because you picture.
Yeah, they have one in. They have one in the Buffalo Wild Wings we have now, but yeah, it used to be in the Applebee's for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those games you get like four guys, you know, all drinking out of their pint glasses, you know, sitting there and you know talking shit, and I played it. I played it quite a bit in bars and stuff, but also I worked in a bar, actually a sports bar called Coach's that was owned by Jim Calhoun, and it was huge. It was 50 TVs, 12 DirecTV receivers. It was actually a lot of work to do that. But we had some games right in front of it. The DJ booth was a press box. And we had that, and we had those Mega Touch games. And they were the guys that we had to play it all night. And then, you know, you had the ones that would really take that arch, like, rear back and move their hand in there. And if you got lucky, you got to see somebody jam their hand in. That was always fun. You know, especially if they were hammered, they didn't feel it till the next day. But it's actually... made a lot of lists. Steve, it was on your list as well. You play Golden Tee a lot?
Actually, it's the one on my list I've played by far the least. It just feels iconic to me. Feels like one I had to have on for whatever reason. Yep. And I remember those years going out during college for Monday Night Football, being at the bar there, and it kind of being split between people who are watching Monday Night Football and people who are there to play Golden Tee. And people would spend hours playing it, and I got to think this thing made $1 billion. People pumping quarters in it. I mean, it like you said, not as much arcade, but then later in life in the bars, it just felt like it was everywhere and people were always playing it. You know, I played it here and there, but I just never was as good as those guys who played it all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So that just kind of aggravated me, and I was like, fucking, I just watch football or whatever.
You were the guys that, you know, you played lacrosse in high school, had your hat backwards and all that, those kind of, you know, with the shirts, with the collars up. Yeah, there was a lot of those guys playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like Logan said, I did get one. And it was on sale, actually. So, you know, there is hope for NBA Jam maybe one day, but I did catch it on a good sale. And I played a couple of rounds, and it's like, wow, I really have got my muscle memory is not there yet. Because it was only like 3 courses on each edition, but, you know, they changed the pin where the pins were. They changed the wind. They, you know, there were a lot of different variables. You know, no round was the same. And my son, who's 13, learned that. He was beating me after 5, 6 holes. And I'm like, we got, 13 or so to go. Relax, okay? And I ended up beating him by quite a bit. Neither score is anything to write home about, but I still won. But Peter, why'd you put NBA Jam on your list?
Oh, you mean Golden Tee? I mean, when I was 20 years old, you can't go down to the liquor store or anything. I mean, that's out. So I and one of my friends, we would go to the dog track. And at the dog track, they had Golden Tee. Now, what you have to understand is that Greyhound racing was no longer popular, which meant that you never had to wait to use said Golden Tee machine. Mm-hmm. And it was great because you could bet on races. Like there was a machine right next to it. You could watch the races on the TV and play Golden Tee all at the same time. It was just magical. I remember the little credits song that plays on the Golden Tee machine from like 1998, 99. Like it was yesterday. I wanted that song. There was a time in my life that I would have wanted that song to be played at my wedding. However, I was too bashful to bring that up. But it's continued on and on. I played Golden Tee last year at an arcade at Salisbury Beach. Yeah, I screwed up my wrist doing it, but because I forgot how to do it. But yeah. I'm not quite as good at it as I used to be, but it's still a lot of fun.
And a little announcer guy too. I remember that too. He's like, "Oh, get the shovel. Oh, you're in the water. Oh, you got and also all the little like hidden things. Like there's like, the guy driving the cart is like, the ball collector is like right there in front of you. There's one hole that there's a dead body on. It's these little Easter eggs they left in the damn game. Matt, of course, it's clean sweep. You had on yours as well. Why didn't make yours?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to belabor the point any longer. It's Golden Tee. It's tremendous. When I was a teenager, they made a plug-and-play version of Golden Tee. I bought that, and I played that nonstop. I was always dog shit at it, but I enjoyed playing it nonetheless.
Yeah, it's a very frustrating game, but it's fun. No matter what. It's like one of the few games that even if you're losing, you're still having a fun time. Mm-hmm. Because also with the trick shots, too, that you can do in the game. Luckily, they have the how to do it up on the game, where you see it. All right. So, Steve, we actually have named all of your Mount Rushmores. Yep. So we're gonna go to Peter. Peter, give us your final arcade game on your Mount Rushmore.
There are two different wrestling arcade games that I love. One of them was called WWF Superstars, and it came out probably about 1988, 89.
Yes,
but the gold standard is WWF Wrestlefest, which I want to say came out in 1991 or 92. It had all the biggest stars and Crush. And you can participate in either you come up through like a tag team, and of course everybody's got their own tag team, the same way that you'd have an NBA Jam preference. For me, it was the Boss Man and Mr. Perfect. But in the Royal Rumble, I would go Mr. Perfect every single time because I loved that you didn't just have to throw guys out like in the real Royal Rumble. You could actually pin them with the Perfect Plex in the middle of like a Royal Rumble with 12 guys running around. And this is also a game I played at an arcade last year. A 40-year-old man playing arcade games, just, not like I pushed kids out of the way or anything, but it was in this secret level of the arcade upstairs that I didn't know about until the last time I went there for the summer.
That's great. Yeah, we had it up in college, up at the University of Hartford, so I played a lot. I think I'm trying to remember the roster. It was Hogan, Warrior, Boss Man, Sergeant Slaughter, Perfect, Earthquakes, Jake. I'm trying to remember who else was in it. But yeah,
Smash and Crush.
Smash and Crush. So you would basically, you'd have to be. There were the two modes. You had the Royal Rumble, which not a lot of people actually knew how to throw people out. It was most of the people I play with always went to the beat up and pin, but I figured out throw them off the ropes and go all the way back and then body drop them out. Actually taught future NBAer Vin Baker how to play that game because he had gone. We were going there at the same time, and he showed him how to play WrestleFest, and actually then went to play a pickup game with him at the Sports Center like a month later. It was great, And then also you had the tag team mode where you put your tag team together. Mine was actually Jake and Earthquake. I would finish him with Jake with the DDT, and then Earthquake would come in and hit him with the sit down splash. And then you would go all the way up to try to take on the LOD. Now Matt, it was on yours, but are you a WrestleFest fan?
I am, and it's a game I really only played a couple of times when I was a kid, but I really enjoyed it. My local arcade had it when I was probably 7, 8 years old, and then once that arcade closed, I never got the chance to play it again. So, but I really enjoyed when I did play it.
Yeah, they actually had an app for the iPhone with actually
and I
current guys, and they stopped supporting it, so it doesn't work anymore. Yeah. Damn iPhones. Logan, it didn't make your list either, but was it in consideration?
I never really got to play this one. They never really had it in any arcades down here. So, I would have loved to have played it, and I know I would have loved it, but I've never actually played this one.
This is one of the... I'm actually talking about Arcade 1-Up. I'm part of a couple of fan groups on Facebook. It's up there with Sportscaster Camp, I guess, in terms of nerdiness. But this is probably one of the top most requested games that people are always like, they need to make this, they need to make this. And it's, and you get to, the people like, no, it's rights issues. I'm like, just shut up and let us dream. Steve, was it in consideration for your list?
It was. This was probably the other game in the Pro Shop Arcade that I played a lot. The problem I have with this and every wrestling game is all I could ever do is kick and punch. I just never could figure out how the hell to do anything.
Oh, the move combinations.
It's just over my head. I still have that problem with current games. I don't know how to do anything, and I don't know. I just give up. All I can do is kick and punch. But I did like it. I like picking the wrestlers and the combinations. Like going into the arcade at 10 and finding this and just seeing the wrestlers like that was very, very inviting. I just didn't know how to do anything. I couldn't get any success, and then I quit.
It was fun. Now, Peter, you also mentioned that WWF Superstars game. We had that at the bowling alley that I worked at. Oh. And, my go-to, Savage's running clothesline was pretty damn good in that game. I know Bossman had a slam. Honky Tonk was in it, had a shake, rattle, and roll. Those were my favorite ones. I mean, Andre was in it. You had heel Andre, actually, in that one. I'm trying to remember who else. Definitely Hogan was in it. Yeah, it was fun. It was WrestleFest was just a better version of that, I think. Everybody was bigger, was less cartoonish. Saying that about a video game is kind of funny, but, So, it was a really solid entry. So, one left before we get to the honorable mentions. That is you, Logan. What is your final one?
I probably kind of cheated with this one, but this was a really iconic game in the arcades that I always went to. But it was a Big Buck Hunter. It was a game where you had the gun that you played with, and you could hunt all kind of big game. You could hunt deer, obviously, but there was, you could go to certain maps where you could hunt elk and all that kind of stuff. But it was just really iconic down here, and it was in every arcade. It was in the Pizza Hut that we had. So it was just a really iconic game down here, and it was a ton of fun. And you could, like I said, you could go over all terrains and kind of hunt any kind of crazy animal that you could think of. So, but yeah, it was just a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, and this one actually is coming out just now. Arcade. This is like I expect some money from Arcade 1-Up for all the mentions here, because this is actually coming out like I think next week or the week after. So if you're a fan of these hunting games, hunting is a sport, so we allow it here. Any of you other guys play Big Buck Hunter? Are you like Ron Swanson in that one episode of Parks and Rec?
Another game I played a decent amount of, and I was always terrible at.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I was dog shit as well. Don't worry.
This is another big bar game. I remember playing this in a bar, and one of my fraternity brothers, who actually goes hunting, is like half in the bag, and he's yelling at me for where my hits are landing. He's like, "You're shooting it in the meat. You're never gonna." I'm like, "It's a video game. Would you relax?"
So, I actually have a funny story about this game. So during the Aaron Brooks era of New Orleans Saints football, I was still having to go to sports bars with the DirecTV feeds to watch the games. And for some reason, the Saints game would always be on this TV that was directly under this game. And I'd be trying to watch the Saints. Aaron Brooks would have me in anxiety and tears, and I'd be watching the game, and then these little, 4 kids would come over, and they're playing it, and they're in the way, and I can't see. So it got to where every week when we would go there, the first thing I would do was put an out-of-order sign on that game. and that went for a good 4 weeks or so until we got busted by the place. because the manager came over with some kid like crying. Like, what do you mean it's out of order? It's not out of order. And I think they figured out that we did it. They weren't happy. But, yeah.
Steve, how dare you infringe on their Second Amendment rights to play video games?
Yeah. That was not cool of me.
All right, let's kind of go around and see if anybody had any honorable mentions that we haven't talked about. Peter, you have any honorable mentions?
I remembered this game, and it barely missed making my list. Ivan Iron Man Stewart, I had to look up his name, Off-Road, which is that game where you had the 3 steering wheels. It was just kind of you go round and round, and then if you win, you could buy like nitros or turbo boosters. You could buy new tires or accelerator. That was a fun little game in the arcade. I remember it was once at hockey camp, and I developed a victory dance, not unlike the Icky Shuffle. Whenever I was
that's great. Matt, you have any honorable mentions we didn't talk about yet?
We have touched on all of mine.
Okay, Logan, you got any?
Nah, I would say the 4 that I listed are pretty much the most iconic ones I can think of. So I don't have any honorable mentions.
And Steve, do you have any honorable mentions that we haven't talked about?
I do not, but I will say that this is what you call it, Arcade 1. They owe you. I've never heard of it until right now. So
yeah, Arcade 1-Up. I actually have 2 of them. I have a Street Fighter 2 one also.
Yeah, that's the first I ever heard that before. So
yeah. So
now I know about it. They do owe you. You got at least one person who's heard of it now.
Yeah. I'm going to mention a couple that I jotted down. I don't know if everybody remembers Dodgeball. There was a dodgeball game used to play, and I think if you hit somebody hard enough, like their spirit flew out of them, like an angel would go up, kind of like the weasels in Roger Rabbit. Karate Champ, a very simple game. Being a big video game guy, there's also called My Arcade, which are these mini tabletop games, like really small ones. And I have a collection, and Karate Champ is one of the ones I have. I don't know if you guys remember Cyberball. That was a futuristic football game where you play with robots, and your ball was like this. It was like a cube, not cube, but it looked like a snowball, but it was this thing that would progressively seem to heat up and blink further, and if you didn't make it on 4th down, it blew up your robots. So that Arch Rivals, the basketball game where you basically spent more time punching your opponents than shooting the ball, and you had the well-endowed animated cheerleaders in that game.
I remember that now. Yeah.
Yes, and Track and Field, where the one you actually had to hit the buttons and do all like the decathlon events. Should not be getting out of breath playing video games. Okay, well. So, with that being said, this is going to bring the end of the first part of our show tonight, where we talked about sports arcade games. But stick around. We're going to talk about those sports games that you play hours and hours of at home on your consoles, whether it's your PlayStation, your Xbox, your Nintendo system, or even maybe mentions of some Commodore games with Matt Souza, Logan Crosland, Steve Bennett, and Peter Winson. I'm Andy Athens. Stick around. Making Mount Rushmore will be right back. Place B Nation, welcome back to episode number 5 of Making Mount Rushmore. I am your moderator, Andy Athens, staying here with Matt Souza, Logan Crosland, Steve Bennett, and Peter Winson. We've talked about the greatest, our Mount Rushmores of the sports arcade games, the ones that you pop quarters in left all the time. Now we're going to talk about the ones, though, you play at home on your consoles. Nowadays, now we have online play, but back in the day, you had to do seasons by yourself, or maybe you had your friends over. So we're going to change the order, though, a little bit. We're going to start with Peter. Peter, give us your first entry in your sports console game, Mount Rushmore.
for the consoles, these are going to be a lot more peculiar from my end, and I hope that somebody actually remembers these games because, video game companies go out of business, such as 3DO, the makers of High Heat Baseball 2004, spent so much time playing that game. I mean, you have to in order to complete a full 162-game season without simulating any games. Bar none, the most realistic baseball game that I've ever played. And when I think back to it and how I would literally stay up all night playing that, the funniest thing about it all is the fact that, as I said, the video game company went out of business shortly after, probably about a year after it came out, and Kurt Schilling was on the cover of the video game. And luckily, video games companies going out of business and Kurt Schilling, they would never mix again.
Yeah, I'm looking at screenshots of it. And it actually looks pretty good. I mean, some baseball companies are, some baseball games are kind of hit and miss. I mean, for me, like All-Star Baseball was a thing for me back in the early 2000s, and now I'm playing MLB The Show. I actually just completed a 162-game season thanks to COVID, and I played every single game with the Yankees. But yeah, I remember that game. Anybody else play High Heat 2004?
I remember being an MVP loyalist, and that was like a rival of MVP, which was the EA version at the time of the baseball game. So I remember the game, but I was just very firmly loyal to MVP, so I always played that.
That's one thing you see at the home too. You see people get very brand loyal to their to some
that I am very brand loyal when it comes to these games. So
Matt,
yeah, I'm the same.
Logan, make yours. High Heat 2004. Now, was this a PlayStation exclusive, or was it across all the consoles?
I played it on the PC.
Okay,
but my friends had it on the PlayStation, so we could cross over and play it anyway. Yeah.
All right. Cool. All right. So, Steve, give us one of your entries.
All right. I wanted to have an 8-bit game on my list, and I thought about Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, Ice Hockey, Blades of Steel, but settled on Tecmo Bowl just because, again, it's just so iconic, and maybe even a little bit more so than the hockey games because it's football, not hockey. But, man, I still play Tecmo Bowl to this day, and I still love to play. And it's so basic but awesome. And there's the players like Lawrence Taylor and Bo Jackson who are just so good. I love to be the 49ers because this is an example where I couldn't be the Saints because they weren't in the game. So I would be the 49ers, so I would know what it would be like to not be getting my ass kicked by the 49ers, which is how my whole youth as a Saints fan really was. And they had like a shotgun play, which I love, but okay, I know there's a lot of people who like Tecmo Super Bowl as well, but to me it's the original Tecmo Bowl. It's just so iconic. It's I have consoles to play sports games, and this was maybe the first or second one that, I spent 340 days of the year playing every day for an hour or whatever. So had to be on. Tecmo Bowl had to be on for me.
Yeah, we had it in college. It was somebody on my floor had it, and it was Bo Jackson was always the best offensive player, and yet, like you said, Lawrence Taylor, and then there were the guys that would do the thing where they would I forgot who they used. I think it may have been Joe Montana, where they would go all the way back into the end zone and throw like the 99-yard pass as far as they could. I remember that play being in there quite often. Logan, you also had Tecmo Bowl on your list.
Yeah, absolutely. We had this game growing up. It was actually we had it at my grandma's house, so every time we went to her house, we definitely played this one. Like Steve said, Bo Jackson was always really fun to play with. He was pretty unstoppable. I also kind of played with the 49ers a lot because they had Jerry Rice, so you could just chuck the ball up to him and he would usually catch it, and he was super fast, so he could always he could always break away for a big touchdown. So, but just an iconic game. Really awesome. It was a little before my time, but we always had it, and it was always a ton of fun.
Matt did make your list. How come?
It's a game I did play a decent amount, but these other games that did make my list were games I played pretty much nonstop, but I did like what I played of Tecmo Bowl, and I mean, there's shirts that are being made with Bo Jackson's image from Tecmo Bowl on it, so I mean, just pick the running play, run up and down across, and you'll score every time. It's very simple.
Yes. Peter, it didn't make your list. We will... it's kind of somewhat related to one that did, but let's talk about this version right now, and then we'll get to another game in a bit. So how come the Tecmo Bowl did not make your list?
Because Tecmo came out with what I consider a far superior game years later, where Steve could play as the Saints, I could play as the Patriots, although they were so horrible. Why would you? And I just enjoyed Tecmo Super Bowl. Don't get me wrong, I like the original Tecmo Bowl, but they built off that and created a legendary game later on. Well,
while we're here, we'll say that is one of your entries. But what were some of the other improvements that made that a superior game to you? Because a lot of people do have love for the original Tecmo.
You could play a complete season. So they used the actual 1991 NFL schedule. They had all the teams, whereas the original Tecmo Bowl had, I think it was 8 teams. Mm-hmm. In the original Tecmo Bowl, you had players' names weren't complete. Like they wouldn't spell out Eric Dickerson's name. He was just Dicker. That really annoyed me for whatever reason. You had the mystery of QB Eagles, the fact that a lot of the quarterbacks didn't have their name in the game because of that whole quarterbacks club. And, of course, the legendary Bo Jackson, who I know was in the original Tecmo Bowl, but I think it's Tecmo Super Bowl where everybody remembers Tecmo Bo, where he was so good at that game that my sophomore year of college, we had a league on the floor of my dorm, and people were banned from playing as the Raiders because it would give too much of an unfair advantage. They're also banned from being the Bills as well, but nobody cares about that. It's all about Bo Jackson in Tecmo Super Bowl.
Yeah, we had in college we had an NHL '92 league where I got the Kings because I drafted lower, so I couldn't get the Rangers. And we had every Saturday we played a tournament, and if you won, you didn't have to put in for the beer run that night. That was the prize of winning the weekly tournament. So, those college tournaments are so much fun.
Andy,
we'll go ahead, Steve.
One other thing I just want to say real quick about Tecmo Bowl. There's a writer on The Athletic called Chris Burke. He's actually a really nice guy. One of his COVID nothing to write about columns, he tried for, I think, 100 attempts to score 100 points on the original Tecmo Bowl, and it actually turned into really good content. So if anyone's interested, if you Google, The Athletic, Chris Burke, Tecmo Bowl, you could read that. But I just thought I'd mention that real quick since we were talking about the game.
Well, we'll put the link in there when we put this up on the Facebook group. By the way, it's the Place to Be Facebook group for those of you who aren't members. When we put a little mention on the show in there, we'll make sure to throw that link in there so everybody can check that out. So, we're up to Logan. Logan, give us another entry on your Mount Rushmore of home video games.
Being from the South, I'm a big college football fan. So the last college football game they made was NCAA football 2014. It just had the most updated graphics and the most updated way of like playing the game, dealing with recruiting and all that kind of stuff. So it was the most hands-on kind of version of that game that they have made so far. And up to this point, this is the last one they made. You could do like a career mode where you started in like high school in the playoffs. And it was really interactive and stuff like that. So, but you could play in the playoffs and kind of improve your recruiting rankings and stuff like that. And you got to pick what school you got. Or certain schools were looking at you, so you got to pick which school you wanted to go to from who really wanted you. But I really hope they make more college football games in the future because they were always a ton of fun. And my team's Mississippi State, and this was actually the year that Dak Prescott was our quarterback. So that one always holds a special memory for me.
Oh, so it was like a real-life video game version of the great Anthony Michael Hall movie, Johnny Be Good, if you will.
Exactly.
I'm hoping Peter got that, that reference because I know he
did.
Yes, Robert Downey Jr. is in that too as well. Uma Thurman, no less. Yeah, the geek from Breakfast Club and 16 Candles getting recruited to play college football. Strange. Hollywood's a wonderful place. Anybody else play NCAA football or any other versions of college football video games over the years?
I did, but I was just such a Madden guy that I didn't have time as much to play. But I will say about NCAA 14 is that there's still people out there who love this so much that they every year, I don't know the technology of it exactly, but they make patches or whatever to make it current. There's like a huge cult community for this game and keeping it playable on, some kind of emulator or whatever, however they do it. But I know that they have current rosters, and I know it's still very, very popular in like a niche way, but, people are dying for a college football game. Hopefully someday the rules work out where they can do it or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm not a big college football guy, but I did buy it once for the Sega Genesis. And I remember it had Notre Dame was South Bend and, Florida State was Tallahassee, and all your players were just the numbers because they couldn't use them for licensing purposes. I mean, it was fine. But yeah, I was mostly, if I'm going to sit there and play, a football game for an hour or whatever, I'm playing Madden. That's really what I'm using my time for. All right, so we're up to Maddie. Maddie, give us an entry. We haven't hit any of yours yet. Give us an entry on your Mount Rushmore of home sports games.
All right, so we're going to go with the iconic Nintendo classic Punch-Out with Mike Tyson or Mr. Dream, whichever one you prefer. Probably Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, to this day, is still maybe the toughest boss in video game history. I've fought him twice or three times using a password, and I have still gotten demolished by him to this day.
You've never beaten Tyson?
No. God.
Oh, wow.
No, never.
Wow.
Never.
I've beaten him hundreds of times.
You get past the first. Have you ever gotten past the first minute and a half?
With Tyson?
Yeah. Because if you last the first minute and a half, you can beat him. Because that's when if he hits you, you go down.
Right. It also means you're better than Michael Spinks.
Right.
But it's just a great game. It's a game. It's on Switch. It's not the Mike Tyson version. It's the one with Mr. Dream. But I mean, the game still holds up, even though it doesn't have Tyson in it. So I think it has to be on this list.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Steve, you had as an honorable mention.
Yeah, and I absolutely love Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. I mean, I played it a lot. This was hard. Like I said, I'm a sports video game guy, so this was a hard list for me. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out could have easily been on it. The only negative is once you know how to beat a guy, you know how to beat the guy, and you beat him every time. Mm-hmm. That's the only, negative to the game. But that doesn't mean, within the last 6 months, I haven't played it. I have.
Right.
So, I still love it to this day.
Yeah. Peter, you play Punch-Out?
A long time ago, yes, but I have been cleaning my mother's house, and I found my Nintendo console, and guess what game was in the console at the time? Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, believe it or not.
Yeah, so with all the somewhat racially insensitive characters in there.
Yeah.
Each one of them had their little, tell, I guess, if you will. And like Steve said, once you knew it. I mean, for me personally, I thought Mr. Sandman was actually, not Mr. Sandman. Yeah, Mr. Sandman was the hardest one to get through. Super Macho Man or Soda Popinski, whatever you want to call him. Yeah, I didn't think it was that hard. But yeah, and Tyson, the first time I beat Tyson was on points. And I was determined to go back and knock his ass out, which I actually ended up doing after many a try. But yeah, definitely a very fun game. And we didn't talk about it in the earlier, but it was actually started in the arcade. And you had you had to actually punch, you would grab the controllers and move them, and they had he wasn't in there, but Glass Joe was in the arcade version. I don't know if any of the, I think Bald Bull was, Mr. Sandman was, and then in the second one,
Soda Popinski was Vodka Drunkinski, I think, in the arcade one.
yeah,
they changed the name for the home release.
I remember you had the Bear Hugger was another one. So yeah, lots of fun stuff there. All right, so back to Peter. Peter, give us another entry on your Mount Rushmore.
Well, when I sent you my list, This was a tough one because I just wrote NHL 2000, but it's kind of a catch-all for the entire Electronic Arts NHL series, starting with, as you mentioned, NHL Hockey, which I think was 1992. The next year, NHL PA 93.
Yes, great one.
Where they had the players but not the teams. And then NHL 94, it all comes together. It ends up in Swingers, I think it was. Watch me make, hey, Superfan 99, watch me make Gretzky's head bleed. Then they wouldn't let guys' heads bleed anymore, which, okay, I understand. But the reason why I said 2000 is that was when they finally got the franchise mode correct with like a draft and all that. In my junior year of college, some people go out and get an internship. Some people go out and get a job. Some people go out and party. Some people sit in their dorm room and smoke cigarettes and play 4 complete seasons of NHL 2000, including playoffs, and win 4 consecutive Stanley Cups, which would have been better, except for the fact that I kept playing St. Louis in the final every year, which I don't understand why that kept happening. But all those games through the years, they all have like a distinct memory. Like, we played NHL 98 in college, and I would always end up being Ottawa, and I would score with Tom Chorsky. Thank you very much, Tom Chorsky. Nobody remembers you as a hockey player, but I do, because you were very good in a video game. Just the whole lot of them. 92 to, I think, 07 was, I think, the last one that I ever played.
I actually have 16, which I'll play on occasion, because the Rangers were halfway decent. Since we're talking about the whole franchise, though, Steve, you had NHL 94 on your list. So.
Yeah, look, I have been playing this literally since the beginning. The very first one, NHL PA 93, 94. I played on every system, all the PlayStations. I think I had NHL 98, NHL 2000, and NHL 2010 on my honorable mention, or at least a couple of those. I love the franchise. 94 was on my list because, again, Pavel Bure being my all-time favorite athlete, he is Bo Jackson-like in this game. 100 speed with Cliff Ronning and Jeff Courtnall, also 100 speed on his line. It's just impossible to stop. I have probably played, you don't want to be hyperbolic, but a couple thousand games. But
there you go.
At least. I mean, with the Vancouver Canucks on NHL 94, it'd be hard to quantify how much I played.
Well, at least you never had to play the Blues in the Stanley Cup, though, at least.
Yeah.
No, I won all those. Come on.
At least you get to, at least it went better, Peter, than it did a couple of years ago. But, it's my, I would say it's my favorite franchise. I've probably had, 15, 20 of them over the years. I usually put it on my Christmas list every year. Yes, I still make a Christmas list at 40. NHL 94 to me is the iconic one. There's still leagues all around the U.S. and Canada where people still get together and play this game. So that's why I put it on my list. And again, mostly motivated by the fact that my all-time favorite athlete is all-time great in it. So
there you go. All right, so Matt, you had NHL 95 on your list.
Yes, I did, but kind of like Peter, I had to pick one, and I went with 95 because it's the one I've arguably played the most. It's either NHL 95 or NHL, I believe it was 15. I played so much NHL 15, that Be a Pro mode where you start from juniors and you work your way up to the top. Oh my God, I played so many hours of that. But NHL 95, it's the theme song from that game is burned into my brain forever. Just the NHL series as a whole, it's great. It was one of the reasons to own a Sega Genesis back in the 90s was the hockey games.
There you go. Awesome. All right, so we're up to Logan. Logan, give us an entry on your... Or did Logan go last? No, we're up to... Now I lost count. Who else? Great job,
Are you counting my NHL 94? Because if not, I'm up, I think.
Yeah, you're up. Yeah, that's right. Sorry, Peter went with... Then we just went all around with all the NHL. So, yeah, you're up, Steve.
All right, since we did the NHLs, I'll do the Madden. So I put Madden 2004 on my list. It's the one with Michael Vick on the cover. I picked this one because I played it the most by far of any of the Maddens, and I was very, very good at it. Very good. I won a tournament in my college easily. Like nobody could touch me. And I say that, again, embarrassed because I was only that good because I played as much as I did, a ridiculous amount. I was always the Saints, and I had like 3 or 4 plays that people just couldn't find a way to stop because I could rotate them, even if they adjusted the coverage, whatever. I was just too good at it. I've had it every year since probably, 1995. I've had the new one. So I'm a Madden guy forever. Eventually I'll get the PS5, and probably the only game I'll buy for it is Madden and maybe the hockey game. So at this point in my life, the only video game I play really is Madden or the hockey one. And I went with 04 on my list because I was so good at it, and it's the one I played the most.
Mm-hmm. As somebody who has played you in Madden, I could attest that you are that good. I'm not that good either. I'm like one of those, like, pop 92 in and I'll kick your ass. But, new ones, not so much. Maddie, you also had Madden, and actually 2004 on your list.
Yeah, solely because of Michael Vick. Vick was absolutely unbelievable in that game. So close to being Bo Jackson-like in Tecmo Bowl. I mean, I think his player rating in that game was a 99. I mean, you run with him, you're not stopping him. It was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Peter, you didn't have any Maddens on yours, but was it in consideration for your list?
Yeah, and it actually would have been Madden 2004 because at least since high school, that's the one that I played the most for all the reasons that you went into. But as I recall, that game was the first time I got to play like a friend in a video game, like via the computer. Because I was living in Nevada at the time, and I just got a great kick out of it. And 16 years later, I still bring up the fact that I defeated him 27-23, taking an intentional safety at the end of the game, but not knowing how to do it, and then having my quarterback just get destroyed in the end zone, and thankfully not fumbling.
You would do that.
Logan, you don't have any Maddens on yours. Was that in consideration?
Yeah, I was 04 would have been one of my honorable mentions because like Matt said, you could play as Michael Vick, and he basically, you could run with him anywhere you wanted to, and he wouldn't be touched because he was just so fast. But the other Madden that comes to mind is I can't remember what year it was, but it was the one that had Larry Fitzgerald and Troy Polamalu on the cover. But I played that one a lot. I want to say it was 2010, but yeah, I played that one a lot as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember I played a lot. In recent years, I've kind of gotten back into it. My son plays it also. But I remember playing it on my Sega Genesis, and I think it was was it 92 or something like that, where if somebody got injured, an ambulance would drive onto the field and literally run over players. I mean, there was no blood or anything, but it was just hysterical that it would actually do that. I do miss the Madden and Summerall commentary like it did back in the day, which was part of the reason why it was, Madden, because, you got to listen to him and Pat do the voices on the game. So much fun. So we are up to Logan. Give us another one on your list.
All right. I got you. Another one on my list is Tony Hawk Pro Skater. This one was iconic because the cartridge for the N64 was blue. I always really remembered that. But this game was so awesome. You could skate around all kind of parks, and you would go around and collect these little videotapes, and that was the story mode that you could go through. But it was just really awesome, and you could go all over these kind of warehouse kind of places and do all these crazy tricks. But this one was just one that I played a whole lot, and it was always just a really great game, and I always really enjoyed playing it.
Mm-hmm. Matt, you had Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
Yeah, I mean, at its peak, this is a game that I played almost daily. I mean, I played it so much. The new one, they just remastered it and brought a new version of 1 and 2 out, and I bought that, and I've been playing that, and the muscle memory came back instantly, 20 some odd years later. I mean, it's so good. The soundtrack is iconic to this day. It's a fantastic game.
All right, cool. Anybody else, Steve or Pete, did you have any Tony Hawk skater games in consideration?
No,
not really, but go ahead, Pete.
Oh, I think I played that game once, and I was so horrible at it that I think I was banned from ever playing it again.
Yeah, the same for me. I just couldn't find success, and like I said before, if I don't, I quit. But I will say, like, that's an example of a video game who took a guy from, this level of fame to another, right? I mean, he got pretty rich and famous because of that game, almost more than anything else.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
It's kind of cool.
Awesome. All right, so Matt, your Mount Rushmore is done. So Peter, you have one more entry to tell us for yours.
Yeah, this is tough for me because there's so many that I'm leaving off. But I had to go with one of my probably my favorite baseball game of all time for the original Nintendo Entertainment System from SNK, Baseball Stars. A game where you could. Where there was actually a point to it where you would play, and you could play a season, but you could also build up like your bankroll and sign free agents. I remember, like, if you played like the team made up of women, you would make more money. That was kind of the secret because they drew a bigger gate. There was that American Dreams team that was effectively just named after all the great players. There was Babe playing right field. Like, okay, we know who that is. Joe playing center field. All right, we figured it out. But it was such a fun game to play. And by the way, Little League World Series is a game that I think was built off of the same engine, and I have to give that a shout out as well because I played that in college more than once, and I always called Canada because I always thought it'd be cool to win the Little League World Series as Canada, just because of how strange that would be. But just a couple of fun baseball games. With Baseball Stars, my cartridge got stolen when my sister had a party, and I'm still angry about it 30 years later, a grown man.
Yeah, that was fun. All right. Anybody else have any Baseball Stars or NES games like in that vein? Yeah.
No, before my time.
Yeah. I remember playing baseball on television, so that makes me really old. And I remember Atari basketball, where it was just like you were basically like a line and the ball was a square. It would go up. All those fun times. Okay, so Steve, let's finish out your Mount Rushmore of home sports games.
Yeah, my last one, it's a baseball game as well. It's Tony La Russa Baseball, essentially the EA Sports version of baseball for Sega Genesis. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you right now that I do not like the heat. Being a Buffalo boy, a hockey player, I like the cold. And I remember the 1993 version, which is the original called Tony La Russa Baseball, came out in an extremely hot summer in Buffalo, New York. And basically that entire summer I did three things. Went to my hockey games or hockey practices, my baseball games or baseball practices, and I stayed inside in the air conditioning and played Tony La Russa Baseball. That was really it for the entire summer. It was just too hot out. And I just remember about this game that, like, it was one of those that sticks out in my mind as we're like, oh, wow, video games are going to another level now. You know, like just with the season features and things like that that I could do. Remember this one came with like stat cards in it and stuff. And,
I remember
yeah, it just, to me, it just felt, it's just one where I would be like, you know, telling people about like, oh, you wouldn't believe what you can do. And then like by the time the La Russa Baseball 95 was out, which I want to say was maybe the last one or it was called that or whatever. But like, wow, look at how advanced this is. You know, like, I can't believe these features, you know. Crazy how much you can do, how much you can save, how detailed. Just felt right for baseball, the stats that they tracked and all that. But yeah, the first one, Tony La Russa Baseball, which would be like Tony La Russa Baseball 93. Oof, I played that a lot. Loved it. Had to be on my list.
Yeah, I would say though, it was fun, but it was probably the weakest out of all the EA I think their football and their hockey are probably their top two, and then their NBA stuff for a while was pretty good when they used to have, what was it, every year was called whatever the NBA finals were, right? Those Bulls versus Lakers. Yeah, Lakers, Celtics. And then everybody had like a special move, like one guy in each team, I guess. And if you hit the right button combination, they would do it. So, I remember that. Anybody else have any Tony Russo baseball in consideration for their list?
My Genesis baseball game of choice was Sports Talk Baseball.
All right. So let's finish off Logan's list.
I'm a big Nintendo fan, so I'm really into the Mario games. I had a GameCube growing up, and we had the tennis and all that, and the baseball. But the one that I played a ton, and the one that I was really good at, was Mario Golf Toadstool Tour. I just played this so much, and it was all the courses were super crazy, and you could do all kind of special shots and stuff like that depending on what character you had. But this is one I just sank a lot of time into, unlocking all the characters and unlocking all the new courses and stuff. But like I said, I'm a big Nintendo fan, so I played all the Mario sports games, but I figured he deserved a shout out on this list.
Oh yeah, I mean, I like I said, I don't do lists, but I write down certain ones like Mario Super Sluggers. I mean, my kids were little, and we had the Wii, so we used to have so much fun in that. I remember tanking games against my son, just so he could, he was like 4 or 5 at the time. He could run around the living room because he literally beat me he was down 3, beats me on a grand slam in the bottom of the 9th. I mean, you can't take that away from a 4-year-old. Come on. Yeah, and also, also they had, I think tennis was another one. And, while we're talking Wii, I mean, Wii Sports Resort was a ton of fun. Oh, my God. Anybody else have any Mario-esque games on their in consideration for their list?
They need to make a new Mario Golf. I will buy that day one. If they
Absolutely, me too. Me too.
Yeah, basically they could take whatever thing and put the Mario characters into it. I will buy it.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that rounds out all your Mount Rushmores, but let's talk about some honorable mentions. We'll start with you, Matt. What's some of your honorable mentions that you wanted to just get on out there?
All right, just a couple. Triple Play 2000, which was on PlayStation, was made by EA. Really fun baseball game for me, someone my age, the peak of baseball, the steroid era, McGuire, Sosa, all those guys. ESPN NFL 2.5, which was kind of the budget version of Madden. I think it sold brand new for like $20, but it had the ESPN license, which was pretty cool at the time. I played a lot of that. And NBA Street Volume 2, which is kind of like NBA Jam. It's arcadey, but they play at like city parks, like Rucker Park was one of the courts you could play at, and it had all the legends in it. You could play as Michael Jordan, which wasn't always a given at the time that they would get Michael Jordan's license for the game, and you could play like as Dr. J and guys like that. And late edition, a game I was actually playing before we started recording this here podcast, Rocket League. That has been a good game to take my mind off of the state of the world during these pandemic times. I've been playing a whole lot of that. So.
Oh yeah, we have that on the PlayStation. My son has it on his Xbox. It is a lot of fun. Peter, any honorable mentions for you?
I have 3. One of them, I'd be remiss if I did not bring up Joe Montana Sports Talk Football and how having announcers in games meant it basically killed me off because I would call my own games and I would tape them. But the announcer, who by the way I think he was the announcer for the 49ers. His name was Lon Simmons, and he would often say in the game, "There's no score." And in college, me and this other guy, we had this running bit, and when I saw him in New York 2 years ago, sure enough, we said to each other, "There's no score. It's beginning to snow." And that was a great game. Now, these last 2 honorable mentions, you're going to think I'm even more of a weirdo because who the hell remembers Front Page Sports Football 96, which had Barry Sanders on the cover. Well, this game, which was on the PC, and it crashed, but they solved it with a patch. was like the later versions of Madden, like 4 years ahead of time, because like you could design your own playbook, like you could design your own plays. It had a pretty detailed franchise mode for 1995 as well. And then finally, this was an MS-DOS game, which probably dates me terribly, called Old Time Baseball, which was an incredible game because it had every MLB roster from 1871 through 1981. And it had all the old ballparks. So it's like, oh, Yankee Stadium? No, we're talking the pre-1976 Yankee Stadium. Oh, and like Crosley Field in Cincinnati. So like I created a draft of, I just picked a year, the 1975. And it did like a draft where I picked the team, and that was a lot of fun because I mean it was all before my time. I mean, like I said, it only goes up to 1981, and it's an MS-DOS game, so literally nobody remembers it except for me.
We had some kind of football game that was like on a cassette tape, and we had pet computers at my grammar school, and again I got stuck with a team I didn't want. I was the Houston Oilers, who were terrible at the time, and we had a league. We were going on. They would let us go into the school on Saturdays and play our league, and we had literally I think 8 computers going at one time. You had to put the cassette in, had to read it, and then you could go on to the next guy and so on and so forth. Yeah, I don't think I did well there. I mean, it wasn't any players. It was basically you would just pick a play and it would just simulate it, I guess, for you. All right, Steve, what are some of your honorable mentions?
I'm a little surprised nobody mentioned a FIFA game. I really liked the 2010 World Cup version because I really only watch international soccer, so I like when the game's focused on that as opposed to club soccer. I mentioned earlier Blades of Steel and ice hockey were in my consideration. Mm-hmm. Ice hockey was great because you had to pick which shape of guy you wanted, and if you picked the skinny guy, he was fast, but he got knocked down. If you picked the fat guy, he would shoot hard, but he couldn't skate fast. That was really fun. Mike Tutz's Punch-Out! We mentioned. And then just other versions of games on the list, like other NHLs or other Maddens. But definitely wanted to mention World Cup, FIFA, any of the FIFAs, ice hockey, Blades of Steel as well. Mm-hmm. Which was great because if you won a fight in Blades of Steel, you were on a breakaway. So big incentive to win those fights.
Yeah,
sort of nice. The key to the game. Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right, Logan, you have any honorable mentions?
Like we talked about when I talked about the Mario golf game, the Mario tennis game was always a fun one that we played a lot, and the Super Sluggers was another one that was a big hit in my house. Another one that I came up with as an honorable mention was the backyard sports games. They came out in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s, but Pablo Sanchez was kind of the Bo Jackson of that. He was the best at every sport. It didn't matter if it was hockey, soccer, basketball, football. He was always the best. He was the best at baseball. But I played a ton of hours of that stuff. And another one I thought of was the Ken Griffey baseball games. I think they made one for the Super Nintendo, and then they made a couple for the N64. I had another one in my head, but it escaped me. If I think about it, I'll say something. But, yeah, those are the ones right off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm going to throw a few on there. Being I am older than all of you guys, I'm going to throw some Commodore 64 games that we used to play relentlessly, me and my friends. This came out actually before Commodore and was on other computers. Bird versus Dr. J. And it later became Bird versus Magic. Basically, it was a one-on-one game. Whether you wanted to do three-pointers, you picked Larry Bird. If you wanted to do dunks, you picked Dr. J, or you picked, Magic. Hardball, which was a fun game for the, you only had 2 teams to pick from, the red one and the blue one, basically on the Commodore. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Epix, not the cable system, but Epix was a company that made sports games, but they focused on Olympic games. So you had summer games, we had summer games too, we had winter games, world games, California games. And those were a lot of fun because you used to be able to play, I think up to 6 of us used to be able to play. And, you all pick your country, and people sometimes would pick Epix, and it would play the national anthem, of course, Commodore 64 style, and Micro League Baseball. And if any of you guys have ever heard of that, where you basically just hit what kind of pitch you want, and then you do what kind of swing you want, and it basically simulated it for you, and they came out with Micro League Wrestling actually later on, and it had 2 different matches you could do. You could do, I think it was Hogan and Orndorff, or Hogan and somebody else. I can't remember who. So I would Google Micro League Baseball and Micro League Wrestling. Those are Peter Winson specials right there. Just
yes,
those sound like right up your alley. So, all right. So that was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for the great Mount Rushmores. But before we go, let's kind of go around the room and see what everybody else has going on outside of this show, where your social media presence, podcast you are on. So let's start with you, Matt. What can you direct people to more of your work?
Well, I'll let Logan speak about the podcast we're both on over on the wrestling feed. Also on the wrestling feed, you can find me on Jenny and the Gems. Last episode of that was looking at ECW from 1992. That was a really fun watch. And on my last episode of Piece of the Action, Andy, I had you on. Mm-hmm. We watched Con Air. That was a ton of fun. Check all that out.
Mm-hmm. Great. Logan, what do you have to direct people to?
We just had an episode of the Wrestling's Chicken Salad drop Sunday, I believe. This was a Monday, so it dropped yesterday. It was on Survivor Series 1999. That show's a lot of fun. It's with Ben and we always snipe at each other, but we have a ton of fun at it. And we had a new impression make its debut, so look out for that one. And it's a doozy. She has quite the appearance. But like Matt said, we also have Highway to the Impact Zone. We just looked at weekly pay-per-view number 108 and the 11th episode of Impact. And those are always doozies to get through. So we're leading poor Jake through a terrible time, but it'll all work out in the end because it gets pretty good in the next year.
All right, awesome. Steve, what do you got going on?
All right, my main work is a podcast called The Sportscasters. I started in 2011. You can find me at sports_casters there. It's basically about bi-weekly at this point. I have one coming up with Kenny Albert. I'm recording with him on Thursday. Ben Ryder, who did the Astros podcast, is on the newest one. But I've had all the big guys in sports media. Joe Buck is a regular. Peter King has been on, Rich Eisen. But you can find that at sports_casters. And then I also do a quarterly podcast with this lunatic named Peter Winson called the Adams Division Podcast. And we're due to organize ourselves and do a new one of those really quick as well.
All right, cool. And Peter, what do you have to direct people to?
Well, in addition to the Adams Division podcast, I host a little podcast called Greetings from Allentown, breaking down a 1-hour episode of professional wrestling from the past, more like 20 to 30 years in the past. And out now, I got a WWF Superstars from November 2nd, 1991, but in the Friends parlance, it's the one where the Mountie soaks Bret Hart and shocks him with the cattle prod. And also, GFA Live, a project that I've been doing with my good pal Keith E. Langston on the weekends. We've been going through the best of the World Wrestling Federation Coliseum videos, and we're now on volume number 6, which has got a Savage Hogan match from '85 on it. So, a lot of fun there.
All right.
Also, we've been breaking down random Karate Kid 2 scenes as well at the end of the podcast, just because it feels like the right thing to do.
It's all right. All right. Well, as for me, you can find me here on the Pop feed. I have several shows, Laugh-In Theater, Blockbuster Rewind. Actually, Matt's going to be on the next episode. We're going to talk about The Matrix and its sequels. That is myself, Scott Shiflett, and Eric Eels are my co-hosts on that. And then check out me, Miranda, and Steve Riddle on the Pop Goes the Classics series. We're going through all the Disney animated films. So check those out, as well as, also weekly now, Pop Goes to the Couch is back. That is where we review streaming shows or anything you're binging. And right now we're doing The Mandalorian Season 2. Each week we're going to kind of get together. It's me, myself, and Scott Shiflett, and whoever else wants to join us on episode 2 of Season 2. Sean Kidd came by, and that will be dropping every Monday at some point. Could be, morning, could be late at night, like this week. But check those out, and we will be doing more Pop Goes to Couch shows coming up when Cobra Kai comes back. I would like to do that, as well as shows like The Boys and anything else, Stranger Things, anything else that comes out that people want to talk about and that are in that have fun. That's all we like to do here at PlayStation Nation. Don't forget, check out all of our great feeds here. That is this very feed. That is the PlayStation Nation Wrestling Network, where you can hear these guys, whether they host show or guest. Steve and Peter often guests on the Mothership, the Place to Be podcast, as well as the Jenny Position. That is Jennifer Smith's podcast feed with lots of great shows on it, like The Journey Through Infinity and Geek and Sassy. And check out the North South Connection podcast feed. That is Justin, Aaron, and Chad's feed, with lots of great shows. And again, a lot of guys are featured on that, and they have a lot of great wrestling and some comic shows on that feed, as well as Jordan's Rank and File. Don't forget, check out the site, check out all the Facebooks, the social medias, and don't forget, join the Place to Be group. And all you trivia fans out there, it will be coming out very soon, the casting call to be on PTBN Trivia Night. That is our very own game show pod on this pop feed. We're looking to record in January, so stay tuned to that. That will be exclusive to the PlayStation Nation Facebook group. So if you want to be on that show and you want to know when we're doing the casting call for the episodes, get in the group if you're not in there. So I want to thank, though, these gentlemen for being on this episode of Making Mount Rushmore. That is Matt Souza, Logan Crosland, Steve Bennett, and Peter Winson. I'm your moderator, Andy Athen. Thank you for joining us. We'll check you out on the next episode. Take care, guys.
Oh God.